What is the greatest fuck it, I'll do it myself in history? Juan Pujol Garcia was a Spaniard who created his own counter-intelligence operation for the Allies during WW II. Initially, he approached British and American intelligence to offer them his services. But both countries rebuffed him. Undeterred, Garcia created a fictional persona as a pro-fascist Spanish official and got himself recruited by the Nazis, who directed him to travel to Britain to recruit agents. Instead, Garcia created a network of fictitious agents and sub-agents using publicly available information like newspapers and travel brochures. It was at this point that he again contacted Allied intelligence. And he was finally recruited. Garcia continued his work throughout the war. And for the same operation, he received both a knighthood from the British and the Iron Cross from Nazi Germany. The Nazis never realized that he was a double agent. In 1947, a guy named Thor Heyerdahl was trying to prove his theory that the Polynesian islands were settled by people from South America, not Asia. Nobody believed him because it was thought that crossing such a large ocean with the technology they had back then was impossible. So he decides to build a boat using only the tools and materials available at the time these migrations took place. And then he sailed that boat across the Pacific Ocean, nearly dying in the process, but ultimately making it to the Polynesian islands. Maurice Hilleman invented over 40 vaccines during his career in the pharmaceutical industry. In 1963, his oldest daughter caught the mumps. He cultured a sample from her, developed a vaccine, and injected it into his younger daughter. That vaccine is still in use and has saved millions of lives. In total, it's estimated that his work has saved 118 million lives globally. Nikola Tesla was tasked with lighting up the World's Fair, but Thomas Edison wouldn't allow him to use any of his patents, so Tesla had to invent a new light bulb that didn't use any of Edison's patents and could still have thousands made in time for the event. Jon Snow, not that one. The father of epidemiology. No one believed him that the cholera outbreak in what is now Soho was because of a contaminated water pump. He broke it. They arrested him for vandalism and held him until the outbreak suddenly ended. Edit. Corrected the location. Otis invented pretty much what we consider the modern elevator. Nobody was convinced it was safe, so he hoisted himself up extremely high and had somebody cut the cable with an axe to prove how confident he was that the elevator was safe regardless of almost worst-case scenarios. The doctor stationed in Antarctica that removed his own appendix. Goddamn. Brian Acton interviewed at Facebook and got turned down. He said fuck it and built WhatsApp. Several years later, Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion. Edit. Here is his tweet from 2009, the day he interviewed. I'm getting this framed for my desk at work. Cliff Stoll, the cuckoo's egg, noticed weird traffic on his university servers. No one believed him that there was any risk occurring. Ended up uncovering a major hacking attempt to steal missile designs and basically created internet security. I think it was missile designs. It's been a long time. In 1888, Almond Brown Strowger, an undertaker, noticed he was losing a lot of business to the other undertaker in town. He found out that the other undertaker's wife was a telephone operator, and when she intercepted people asking to be connected to Strowger's funeral home, the operator would route the call to her husband's funeral home instead. 3 years later, Strowger patented the automatic teller exchange, a system which allowed telephone users to make calls without the need for human operators, single-handedly destroying an entire workforce. James Clerk Maxwell was idolized by Einstein as being the father of modern physics. Not only did he formulate the classical theory of electromagnetic radiation, but just for shits and giggles he calculated exactly what Saturn's rings were made from using pure mathematics. It wasn't until Voyager 1 and 2 passed by and took photos in the early 80s did we get confirmation that Maxwell was right. He then calculated how to take a color photograph in 1855. This was then achieved in 1861 and is recognized as the first ever color photograph. Probably the time Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa decided they couldn't wait around any longer and legged it for 10 days across the Andes with no warm clothes, climbing gear, or food except some scraps of their dead friends stuffed into a sock. They finally found someone out in the middle of nowhere. Sergio Catalan, who rode horseback all night and then took a bus to get some help. The mountain climbers had come from the wreckage of a crashed plane that everyone had been looking for over 2 months. They needed help for the other survivors who were injured and starving. They saved 14 of their friends. Henry VIII couldn't get his way with the Pope. So he made the Church of England so he could do what he wanted. It's gotta be Aimo Koivunen. He was a Finnish soldier in the Second World War when the Finns were trying to reclaim land from the Soviets. He got separated from his unit mid-war in the middle of nowhere. He was the one tasked to carry the drugs they held in case of injury or tiredness. One of which was Pervitin, which was literal meth in a tablet form. Instead of just taking 1 or 2, he downed the whole bottle and went on a weeks-long methed-up rampage. He got hit by a landmine, evaded Soviet soldiers, caught a bird and ate it raw, all while on skis. He finally made it back to Finnish lines where on arrival, he weighed only 90 pounds or so and had a heart rate of 200 beats per minute. He ended up living for another 45 years. Edit. Here's an article if you want to read more and see a pic of his unyielding stare. A man who was a tractor mechanic company owner made a good chunk of money and bought a Ferrari. He felt that the car wasn't as good as it could be. And it wasn't very comfortable. So he brought his complaints all the way to Enzo Ferrari, the owner of the company. Enzo insulted the man, saying a mere tractor mechanic didn't know how to make a sports car. That sparked a rivalry that lasts to this day. That man was Ferruccio Lamborghini. Edit. Thanks to you, TDS 755 and you, King Chameleon 07 for correcting me. Not a very old story. Manji or the Mountain Man lived in a very remote village of India whose route to nearby was blocked a mountain and hence villagers had to climb it every time. And they had to do that daily to get essential supplies. During one of these trips, his wife fell down the mountain. He loved her a lot. He tried first to persuade the Gov to do a mountain tunnel project there but to vain. So he went on alone to break the entire mountain with just an axe. He did that for 10+ years and finally succeeded. There is a Bollywood movie on him too, title, Manji, the Mountain Man. When Julius Caesar decided to just up and fucking march into Rome to declare himself the military leader. Donald Knuth is one of the big names in computer science. Back in the 1960s he set out to write the definitive texts on computer programming and analysis of algorithms. The first 3 volumes came out and he started the 4th in the early, mid-1970s. He was unhappy with how the newer printing editions were typeset and so he took a summer to solve that problem. A decade later the 4th volume still had not been completed. But as a consolation prize we got TeX, later extended to the more commonly used LaTeX. Without question the most comprehensive and powerful language for creating documents with heavy technical requirements. It is a strange mix of a markup language like HTML and a compiled language like C. It is completely free and has been for well over 30 years and is probably the most bug-free piece of software I've ever seen. Certainly for its size and scope. There's not much out there of comparable quality. There is literally no mathematics that cannot be properly typeset in TeX, LaTeX. Its default style is instantly recognizable to any working mathematician. It is used across nearly all STEM fields and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of journals that only accept manuscripts written in LaTeX. It wasn't until the early 2000s that drafts of the 4th volume started to appear. Nobody has seemed to mind. When Nintendo turned down a collab with Sony. Then Sony said, "Fuck it. We'll do it ourselves. The rest is history." During the American Revolution, John Paul Jones sailed over to England to burn down British naval ships. He succeeded of course, and made back safely. After the revolution he was even pardoned by the town that he burned most of the ships in. I'm surprised no one's mentioned Catherine the Great of Russia. She decided her husband was useless, which, granted, he was, and proceeded to set up a military coup to overthrow him. Even with the plan being discovered early. She dressed herself in military garb and marched with her new army, which had just sworn loyalty to her, down to Peter's palace, where he was forced to resign the throne. All without a single drop of bloodshed. At least until Peter turned up dead some time later under shady circumstances, but honestly for a military coup it was pretty non-violent. If saying "fuck it, I'm ruling Russia myself" isn't great, I dunno what is. I mean, it's right there next to her name for a reason. Desmond Doss. single-handedly saved from 50 to 100 men up on Hacksaw Ridge in Okinawa. His company was ordered to retreat when they were attacked by the Japanese, but instead he said nah. Stayed up on the ridge alone, unarmed, and dragged as many soldiers as he could to safety without any help. Even when he was shot by a sniper and riddled with shrapnel, he made sure they took another guy down the hillside before him. Edit. I'm aware there is a movie. I've read about him before and I know he's done more than just what is in the movie. I just didn't want to make a 3,000-word post about the many ways this guy is amazing. The guy who started FedEx wrote a college paper about a nationwide overnight shipping company. And got a C. Started the company anyways. Later, after he started it and it was struggling, he couldn't get a loan and the company was almost bankrupt. And he bet next week's payroll at the casino on roulette and won. Also got a Silver Star in the Vietnam War and now co-owns the Washington Redskins. The latter often viewed as the biggest failure in his life. Canadian soldier Leo Major and his friend Willie Arsenault were scouting a Dutch town called Zwolle that had been captured by Germans in WW2. On this scouting trip, the two had decided to liberate Zwolle together, but were spotted and Arsenault was killed. Major, enraged, killed 2 Germans while the rest fled. On the outskirts of the town, Major intercepted a vehicle, disarming the soldiers there. He told a French-speaking soldier that all the Canadian artillery would be firing on the town in the morning, and decidedly let the Nazi free to spread the rumor, even returning his weapon as a total alpha move. That night, Major decided to single-handedly liberate the town, arming himself with many weapons. He made explosions and noise, making it sound like the entire Canadian army was there. Several times that night, Major went back and forth from Zwolle to the Canadian base, taking 8 to 10 German prisoners each time. At one point, Major located the Gestapo, high-ranking Nazis' headquarters and raided it himself. He killed several SS officers and the rest fled. By morning, Major discovered that the Germans who had taken Zwolle had entirely retreated. I should also mention that Major was a sniper who had only one eye from a phosphorus grenade explosion years prior and remained in the military because he insisted he only needed one eye to aim his weapon, and that to him, he looked like a pirate. The Dutch town of Zwolle was liberated by a one-eyed sniper. He has several other legendary acts, but this to me was his best. Edit. Some details, including the return of a Nazi's weapon. George Clooney bought his own spy satellite to prove the alleged crimes of an African warlords because nobody else would. Leo Major. He liberated an entire village from Nazis by himself. He's one of the handful of super badass soldiers you sometimes hear about from WW2. Leroy Jenkins. The dude in the war with wounded fingers. A doctor wouldn't amputate them, so he bit them off himself. Closest I can think of is Erwin Rommel during the Blitzkrieg, seeing an opportunity to make an exploit and instead of waiting said fuck it and charged 200 miles into French territory. Clara Lemlich taking the stage at a union meeting in 1909 to declare a general strike after the older male union leaders told the working girls that there really wasn't a point in striking and it would be too hard. Just be patient and deal with it. So 20-year-old Clara interrupts them, climbs up on the stage, and shouts at the crowd that she's tired of just talk. Time to strike. And everyone went for it. Instant agreement of the workers. Wow. This got some attention. So editing to add that I dug up my old research, a translation of what she said. Originally in Yiddish. Was I have listened to all the speeches and I have no further patience for talk. I, too, have worked and suffered. And I am tired of talk. I move that we go on general strike. Now. Seward's decision to buy Alaska from Russia. The giant Norse axeman who held the choke point at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. By the time the bulk of the English army had arrived, the Vikings on the west side were either slain or fleeing across the bridge. The English advance was then delayed by the need to pass through the choke point presented by the bridge itself. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle has it that a giant Norse axeman, possibly armed with a Dane axe, blocked the narrow crossing and single-handedly held up the entire English army. The story is that this axeman cut down up to 40 Englishmen and was defeated only when an English soldier floated under the bridge in a half-barrel and thrust his spear through the planks in the bridge, mortally wounding the axeman. 15. Let's not forget that Isaac Newton ran out of math to work with and was like, I guess I'll just invent calculus then. Metallica fired Dave Mustaine, 1983, because he was sort of a control freak and wanted to take the band in a more prog, jazz metal direction. He was also abusing drugs and was known for violent behavior at the time. He went off and created his own band Megadeth, and over the next 30-plus years he sold millions of albums and toured the whole world writing and controlling pretty much everything he's ever wanted. It seems they've all now patched things up. Dude is an absolute genius beast of a guitarist, songwriter. Also, when guitarist Hillel Slovak died, 1988, John Frusciante was a 19-year-old kid and a huge fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He was heartbroken and didn't want to see the end of his favorite band. So he went and auditioned to play lead guitar. He got the gig, helped take them to the top of the charts. The rest is history. Today he's considered one of the greatest rock guitarists out there. Alexander the Great solving the Gordian knot by cutting it with his sword. Hannibal of Carthage deciding to take his army over the Alps. Includes war elephants. Wasn't there that Russian, of course he was Russian, doctor that did stomach surgery on himself? With only a bottle of vodka for anesthetic. Martine Rothblatt, founder of SiriusXM and unbelievable polymath, was told her daughter Genesis had 3 months to live. She had been diagnosed with a type of pulmonary arterial hypertension which was fatal. The disease causes too much pressure in the blood vessels leading from the heart to the lungs, causing them to narrow and not carry enough oxygen. So Rothblatt quit all of her other work and went to the library to save her daughter. Even though she had zero background in the field, she figured out a cure and in the process founded United Therapeutics, which is a billion-dollar biotechnology company. Rothblatt's life story is amazing. The story of calculus. When Pedro Serrano realized Jobu wasn't going to help him hit a damn curveball. Lioness of Brittany. Lamborghini building cars because fuck Ferrari. I've posted this guy before. Total badass. Scroll down and read the Mo citation. While you read that, remember that this happened after he stepped on a landmine a few years earlier and taught himself how to walk again. The Soviet woman that lost her husband to the Nazis sold everything and to pay for a tank with the request that she gets to drive it to fight Nazis. Go read up about Maria Oktyabrskaya on Wikipedia. When Princess Vespa's hair got singed. The first thing that comes to thought here is the Louisiana Purchase. Congress planned on buying a small piece of the available land. But Jefferson used some interpretation fuckery to double the size of the U.S. without congressional approval. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.